Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's SWOG webinar, which is therapeutic work with children in a woodland setting. Tonight, we are joined by Sue Coombes, who not only is a SWOG regular, she's actually a proud owner of one of the neighbouring woods as to where I have my wood. And we were corresponding back and forth without even knowing on the shared WhatsApp group. So, which is testimony to how important the little WhatsApp groups for each of our individual woods are. They're not just about talking about padlock issues. You can actually achieve great things about them, but though I will admit it is mostly padlock issues if you're anything like ours. Sue has worked with children, but I'm going to, for many, many years, but Sue can introduce herself far better than I ever could. So Sue, I'm going to pass over to you and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to turn on subtitles because I'm all up for inclusivity and anything accessibility, so anything that helps people. But I'll try not to look at it because it will show me rambling and umming and erring and things. Yeah, as Sarah said, I've worked with children for over 30 years. With autistic children and neurodivergent children for nearly 30 years. And the Woodland, I've been working outside with children for 14 years. So the Woodland is a relatively new thing. So I hope you find it interesting to see what I do. And it's developing all the time. So this slide for me, children are like seedlings, and you need to give them light, nutrients, soil, oxygen, and they will grow into their best selves. And a lot of children I work with, they've been in a system like this. Oh, let me get my laser pointer. I do like a laser pointer. I think I changed the color of it. Sorry. Yes. So, still
We
not
were
working.
red yesterday, weren't we, Sue?
We were. I didn't like red. It's a bit alarming. Okay, so a lot of the children I work with feel that they are being trained into something they're not. And personally, I feel like that's what the education system does to children. You know, these trees, they are trained to be a certain shape because that's useful to whoever's training them. The same with the bonsais. You know, they are, you know, um, cut and pruned and deprived of nutrients because that's what people like. Whereas children should be like trees that are allowed space, air, light, freedom to grow. And what I try to do is help children recover from this system to grow into their best selves. And I always say it's not my job to fix you. There's nothing wrong with you as you are. I'm just here to help you grow into your best self. And to do that, you know, I want to give them light, soil, oxygen, water, all of that that they need. So it's very much a positive psychology model. It's very much about you give somebody what they need and they will grow. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of healing that I do around what's happened to them. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. But I've always, well, for a long time, that's sort of been my model of working with children. This is just, oh, no. This is just a sort of quick bit of background. I didn't include before that, was a playgroup leader. And then I trained as a teacher in a special school working with autistic children. I worked there for nearly 20 years. And I had a couple of horses and I read some research about horses and children with autism. And eventually I set up an alternative provision working with horses and outdoors, supporting children who couldn't cope with mainstream school or even special school. A lot of them were totally traumatized by school. So I understood autism. I did some training to become a counsellor just so I understood the trauma that they'd been through. A lot of autistic children experienced trauma, partly because of their sensitivities to certain things and their need for things like routines and things not to change. So unexpected change can be traumatizing. Things that we wouldn't think are traumatizing can be traumatizing for them. I also trained as a equine facilitated therapist to just so that I knew what I was doing with the horses, and as a mindfulness teacher. And I'm also a late diagnosed autistic and ADHD person. And at the bottom, I put it had a little subtitle box. So I thought, what am I going to put there? I don't know who I am still. I'm always discovering. So it's sort of like with the children, it's like we're on a journey of discovery together. I'm not obviously using them to explore myself, but I'm having fun with them, and just they're exploring who they are, and I'm still doing that too. So that's my background. This is some of the pictures of the horses that we worked with. So we developed a very new approach. So I started off traditionally, the research I read was about children with autism riding and the impact of riding on their regulation. It calms them. And I did a little pilot project just to see what happened. And one boy slept through the night every time he came. At first, his mum thought he was ill, but by the third week, she had a bottle of wine ready. Another child, his language just exploded. I mean, he was so excited that he said his first sentence while he was on a horse. And he hasn't shut up since, actually. He's a fantastic young man now, working at the university. And when he went back to nursery that September, they couldn't believe his language. And another boy said his first word. I was supporting his communication by singing, and I was singing a song, a commentary song, and missed out a word. When you're doing head, shoulders, knees and toes and you miss out the heads, it's really hard not to say it. And I was singing about him looking at the roof, and I missed out the roof about the sixth time round the school, and he filled in with a sound that was obviously trying to say roof. So yeah, I couldn't not do something, having seen, I didn't think I would see that level of change really in 4 sessions over 4 weeks, one session a week. So I eventually gradually left school and built up this learning centre. And at first, I didn't really know what I was doing. I did some training in equine assisted learning. But as we worked, what I realised was I didn't want to be riding the horses. I was working with children who were so traumatised that they were waiting for me to shout at them or to say something bad to them. So I needed to model being a safe person. I needed to model that they could trust me, that I would respect their choices, I would listen to them, and I would accept their no. If they said they didn't want to do something, it's so often in schools, children are made to do things, even when they say, no, I can't do that. For whatever reason, at that moment, they can't do it, and they are made to do things or punished if they don't. And it felt very incongruent to be making the horses do something that actually they didn't want to do. Because, right from the beginning, I was teaching children how to read the horse's communication. Autistic children struggle with communication, understanding body language, and horses and all the other animals we work with, their only way of communicating is through their body language. But I worked with a group of autistic children for a few weeks doing some teamwork skills, and one boy, I said they need to work together to ask these horses to move to a different field, and they were all trying different things and weren't working as a team. And then one boy started walking off to the next field very purposefully. And I said, oh, have you told anybody else what you're doing? Have you asked anybody else to help you with whatever you're doing? And he said, no, I don't want to say it because the horses might hear me. So, that sort of lack of understanding, that horses don't understand what you say, but also that body language is a form of communication. Some children don't actually believe that you can communicate with body language. And so I say, okay, what does that mean then? What does that mean? So, to give them example. So we were talking about communication, and with these horses, this horse was very difficult to get near. So this girl had spent ages calming herself down so that she could get near to that horse, and that's a beautiful photo of her regulating herself and not flapping and not running and not being excited and moving quickly so that she could get near this horse who was the leader. And these horses are playing, but some children would think they're fighting, and we could have a discussion. If they think they're fighting, I wonder what they're fighting for. Wonder what it's like. What does it feel like when somebody wants to fight with you, or what does it feel like to want to fight? So we were observing the horses, thinking about what their feelings were, their thoughts were, and looking at their behaviour. These two, they're grooming each other, so that's a sign that they're sort of bonding. This is just the herd watching something new that's going on, and again, that's just the herd, and this is again another girl just spending time outdoors. Spending out time outdoors. Well, we Woodland owners, we obviously love being outdoors, but for children who are in school all the time and struggling, and schools are such a sensory overload. They're noisy, they're busy, people moving around, chairs scraping. I'll always say that because that used to the lights, some children can see flickers in fluorescent lights. So, school is a total sensory overwhelm. But when you're outdoors, children they're so much calmer. And we used to have children come to us with huge risk assessments. They'll attack you, they'll kick you, they'll bite you, they'll run away, they'll use tools to attack people, and all of that went out the window once they're out in the field. It just became obvious that it wasn't the children that were a problem, it was the environment that they were in. And getting them outdoors just calmed them so much. And then they were ready to learn. A child in overwhelm, stressed, trying to cope with everything that's going on around them isn't in a fit place to learn. So, sorry, I'm trying to move on. So, this is what we sort of developed. These were our sort of key principles. The most important thing was safety for all our children, and working in the wood. The first thing I say is that it's my job to help you feel safe. And it's not just physical safety, it's emotional safety. Do you feel safe with me as a person? And it's not going to happen in the first session, it's not going to happen for some children, it takes a long time to feel safe. And about connection, acceptance of themselves, acceptance of whatever's going on around them, communication, I've said before, empathy, understanding other people's feelings helps them to understand their own feelings. Nurture, caring for an animal gives them vicarious care. So we had a pony that would get particularly anxious, and anxiety is a huge thing with our children, but they wouldn't talk about it. They couldn't say I get really anxious, because it causes so much shame. But we could say, oh, Flick gets anxious, look, Flick's feeling anxious at the moment. When I get anxious, I get butterflies in my tummy, or I get a dry mouth, or I find it hard to swallow. And that way you are helping them to think about what's going on for them without putting the spotlight on them, without shaming them, without judgment. And then we can think about, how can we help Flick? you know, does he need a massage? Shall we get him a hot water bottle? So they've got ideas to support themselves by caring for Flick. And yeah, Flick was the pony. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, it was so helpful to not have them, you know, CAMS, the children that I worked with, they'd all been referred to CAMS, and CAMS had never worked, because CAMS was about going into a room with somebody you don't know and talking about all the really difficult stuff. Nobody wants to do that. You know, that's not supportive. It's re-traumatizing. Whereas if you come outside in a field, and obviously we're going to talk about in the woodland, it feels like it's already calming environment. And then the talking can start, but it's more about accentuating the positive. Think about what's your strengths, what do you love, and addressing the difficulties in between. So playfulness is just such a great way of engaging children. And curiosity about the horses, curiosity about themselves, curiosity about me, curiosity about life. And this is a Penny being curious about what happens if I grab the handle of the wheelbarrow and knock all the poo out that somebody spent hours picking. So these guys were best friends, and one of them died, and the children, you know, that gave them a chance to think about loss, and to see Flick, who was left on his own, actually managing it and bonding with somebody else, and another horse looking for them. And a lot of the children we worked with aren't with their birth family, so you know that loss comes up a lot. And to see that actually he was okay, he lost him and he's probably still sad, but he moved on, he had another friend to look after him. So all of the work that we did, I always say, you can never be, however much planning I try to do, which is really none, I can never think of ideas as good as the children's. So this was the children. They worked out a way to get the ponies to do some art. They actually spread paint on some paper, covered it with cling film, I think, and put horse treats on. So the horses are painting with their noses. You know, it's just when you give children freedom to explore, freedom to try things out, take risks, make mistakes. I always say, there's nothing wrong with making mistakes, it's how we learn. But school, if you make a mistake, it's terrifying. So many children are too scared to learn because they might make a mistake, you know. And there's, even if it's a lovely teacher, there is a sort of sense of shame about making a mistake in front of other people. Whereas, you know, I wanted to create an environment where they could try things out, you know, they could be creative. And if it went wrong, that's fine. We've learned something from it, and we'll think of a way to do it differently. So yes, this is an old guy. He was nearly 40 at this point, and he would be playing in the mud. And we did a lot of playing in the mud, which we've got quite a lot of on the tracks at our wood. I've got a lovely video of a young person playing in the mud, but I can't share it because of to protect their identity. But playing in the mud is like sensory delight. And I used to go caving in Derbyshire and play in the mud, and it's just wonderful. It's calming. Apparently it's got all sorts of microbes that release antidepressants, or, you know, it's, playing in the mud is fantastic. We did mud art. One boy actually did a mud angel. And designed a game throwing mud into a puddle and exploring what sort of mud made the best sound. You know, it's science. It's yeah, so exploration. And there was no fear about being in the mud. You know, we don't care if you get dirty, it's fine. This was a pony who liked to go and see what the children were doing, so she's looking through a door. And again, freedom, you know, allowing the horses freedom to explore, modeled for the children that this was a place where you could make choices on your own. It was okay to make choices, it was okay to explore. And all of these, are relevant to the work that I do in the wood. Those principles are what I bring to the work in the wood. Yeah, there's a young man. We know which plants the horses like to eat, so he's gone and collected some sticky weed for this horse. It's a very good anti-inflammatory. So, and this guy was very old, same was in the mud. So he was giving him some sticky weed to help with his points. And we had one boy who decided he was going to make wraps for the horses, and was trying out different leaves to see what they eat. So exploring plants. And there's something that we used to talk about, this word zoopharmacognosy, which is zoo, obviously animals, pharma with ph, sort of chemicals, medicine, cognosy, knowing. So animals know which plants to eat for their health, to support their health, or to treat anything. So he was making wraps with different plants to see what the horses will eat. And we do a bit of that in our mud kitchen as well, but we don't actually eat it. Yeah, this was a young person trying out her mask that she'd made, and to see what the horse thought of it. Horses are, well, animals are all safe for children who struggle with spoken language. Even if they don't appear to, horses aren't going to say anything to them, or animals aren't. Animals aren't going to lie. Animals aren't going to manipulate. They're not going to say one thing and mean another. They're totally safe, and they're honest. So she was seeing, or they were seeing, what Reuben thought of their new mask that they'd made completely themselves. And yet this is about safety. Reuben is a very special horse. So this was a young man who, he was expelled from school, lots of trauma, lots of stuff going on in his family. And just to lie down with Reuben was like what he needed to regulate himself, to recover from what is going on. I didn't have to do anything. It's just, let the horses. Again, Reuben's a very huggy boy, and he sort of pulls you into a hug. And the feel of leaning on a big animal, it's like leaning on a tree. For me, leaning on a tree, you feel supported, you feel literally someone's got your back. And the horses have that sort of solid presence that you can lean on and feel supported. And these are just two horses lying down, and modeling safety for the children. If you walk in to a place where the horses are lying down asleep, you can feel safe. So I was looking for somewhere to have the horses. We're on rented land, and this woodland popped up. And I happened to be selling a house. My mum had sold her house to move in with my sister and give me a bit of money, and I bought a woodland. And those are some of the things that people say. I don't know if you've had similar reactions when you say you've bought a woodland. People think you've gone crazy. My partner said, how can you have a woodland? You can't even keep the garden, clear or whatever. But that was because I didn't do it right in the garden. But yeah, so I ended up with Hazewood, which is, as Sarah said, near her. It's on in Nottinghamshire, on the border with Leicestershire, and it's actually the corner of the wood, so it's open to the south and the west. So it's really light. It's just a brilliant place. I had to work very hard to keep it because the house sale took a long time, but it having the light makes such a difference. And we've got a lovely place to watch the sunset as well over the hedge. So there's open fields on two sides. And this, I was thinking, this is what the space means to me. And I don't know whether anybody, you want to share what your woodlands mean to you. We could put it in the chat if you want to think of any words that your woodland means to you. But those were what came up. One of the children has said it's like a bubble. It's like when he's in the wood, it's like a bubble that is separate from the rest of the world, separate from the stress of life. It's just like coming into a peaceful bubble. So I just wanted to, you know, share what it meant for me, and maybe encourage you to think about what you probably already do, what your woodland means to you. And for me, sharing is really important. I always want to share what I love. I want to share my joy, basically. And so there's a local special school that do forest school in my wood for 2 days a week. And the sound of children laughing in the wood, you just can't beat it. A group of children laughing in the wood. So when they started running their forest school, they set up a camera, and we were very excited to see what they found. So it's only a couple of minutes long, just let you see.
Mm.
This will crack off up our wood, Sue. I've never seen half of this.
This was so exciting you'll see the exciting
Oh,
bit in a minute.
because I've always got a noisy 8-year-old with me. That's scaring everything away.
We didn't know we had badgers.
Oh,
Mm.
I've seen jays up there.
Yeah, hares, seen hares.
Wow.
So yeah, that was when they so that was I've been in the wood about a year, and we still couldn't really access the western half. And that's where the badger set is. So it's right on the edge of the woodland. And they go through a little brook. You can see their footprints when it's been muddy. Well, it's a ditch really, but it's occasionally a stream into the open farmland with no cattle. So hopefully they're safe from being culled for spreading TB. But yeah, it was just very exciting to know that there were badgers in my wood. But that was, a benefit of sharing is, things like that. So the children I work with are neurodivergent. And I just wanted to sort of explain my company that I've set up is neurodivergent therapeutic support. But we've decided to trade as Rainbow Woodland because it's a bit of a mouthful. But there's a lot of talk these days about neurodiversity and neurodivergent. And with the children, I don't know if these slides particularly show it, but we like to look at the trees. It's a plantation, mostly Scots pine and Corsican pine. It's not an ancient woodland, that with all lovely things in it, but it has its own beauty, and I love the sound of the trees and the wind and looking up to the blue sky. But we often comment on the trees that don't grow the way they're meant to grow. They're supposed to be straight, that's why they're planted, and they grow in all sorts of shapes. And we celebrate the trees that are different to everybody else. And neurodiversity is this sort of concept that everybody's brains are different, but some people's brains are more different, and that causes them problems, difficulties. So the neurodivergent brain is like a tree. I mean, there's a few. It's a bit small, but there are trees that grow all different ways. But there are some trees that are particularly bent, and it means they're more vulnerable to being blown over or losing branches or whatever. So we talk about, everybody's different, but some people are more different than others. And there's neurodivergence is a big umbrella. So ADHD, ASD is autism. PDA is a particular profile of autism that I sort of specialize in. So I worked with psychologist who first identified and produced the name, called it PDA, a sort of subtype of autism. And then there's PTSD, which most of the children I work with have got, OCD, which can come on its own, but it also comes, a lot of children with autism have tendencies, OCD tendencies. And epilepsy is another comorbidity. Tourette's is another comorbidity. I don't work with bipolar personality disorder. What's it called? I think I should have put EUPD, personality disorders. But borderline personality disorder. But all of those, there's also acquired brain injury. There are lots of brains that are different from neurotypical, which is the rest of the population. So I just wanted to explain that, and how we see the trees as sort of modelling that. So finally, I've got to what we do in the Woodland session. So there's lots of resources that the school have put in. And I don't know if people have heard of sensory integration. A lot of autistic children struggle with sensory differences. So, and they can feel quite dysregulated because they don't get the right sort of feedback from their body. So physical activities, balancing, this is a pig, if you can see, again, balancing, climbing, swinging. This is actually a musical tree, but I took the photo into the sun. It's an oak tree with various instruments hanging from it, and they can get sticks and bang them and scrape them and make lots of fun noises. Building dens, carrying things, carrying heavy things, swinging. They built a wagon from a trailer that was dumped by the side of the wood. And the Woodland UK manager never got rid of it, as he said he would. And then the children pulled it into the wood and created this wagon that's like a sort of den. I think it's brilliant. The imagination and creativity of children. We've got a mud kitchen, pouring, handling mud, sort of sensory integration, climbing, balancing, all of those things that really help the children to stay regulated. Hard physical activity, deep pressure. I mean, you've probably seen weighted blankets around, weighted cuddly toys. Deep pressure is very calming for everybody, but particularly autistic children. Heavy work, carrying heavy things, pushing wheelbarrows, carrying buckets of water. All of those things really help to calm children, and also hopefully wear them out so they'll sleep at night. So yeah, this, some of the musical instruments are your sort of baking trays and anything that you can hit that makes a noise. I've actually got some bars from a old glockenspiel that I'm going to thread. I've bought some nylon thread. I'm going to thread and hang it up there as well. They've got a triangle. Yeah, lots of different sensory activities to help regulate.
Can you tell me what a weighted blanket is?
It's literally that, a weighted blanket. I mean, I think they sew, it's either sand or little pellets of something, like little pellets. It's quite heavy. You have to get a
Sometimes it's
particular
like
weight.
lentils, like
Yeah.
dried pulses.
Yeah. You have to sort of be careful about the weight. So I've got one for myself that's very heavy that wouldn't be suitable for a child.
So do
Because
you
it's
climb
too,
into it? Is this the point?
well, it's actually a blanket. So
It's like a
you put
hammock.
it on yourself. No,
Oh,
it's you put it on yourself. It's deep pressure on top of you. There are all sorts of things.
okay.
There's like a stretchy lycra sheet that goes over a mattress, and the child can climb underneath that, and that contains them. I used to have a like a sack, a lycra sack that they could climb in. I'm not quite sure where that is. A deep pressure. You can get weighted shoulder pads. You can get weighted lap pads. You can also get vests. They're called bear hugs, but there are lots of different ones that you can pull tight to provide that sort of.
So
Sorry,
sorry,
go on.
it gives a sense of security. Is this
Yeah.
the main thing?
Yeah.
Well,
I
it
used to work in an autism specialist school, and
Okay.
the kids, you know, when you have a rucksack and it has the things that you can like click on the front, like I've got a million rucksacks. Like here's my running one. You know, like this kind. The kids always at school love to be clicked in, like putting their seatbelt on, and I think they feel like they're safe. I don't know, like it's like a hug or something.
yeah.
But they
I,
always have every clip going on. They love it. It's so
so
strange.
Great.
they struggle with interoception, which is sensing what's going on within your body. So
Mhm.
they don't get feedback. So proprioception is the feedback you get from your joints and muscles. They don't get the same feedback. They don't necessarily get the feedback of needing to go to the toilet, being hungry or thirsty. All of those, when we talk about senses, we think, the 5 typical senses. They struggle with all of the senses, including internal interoception. So something that puts deep pressure on you helps you to feel your body, which
So,
then helps you to calm.
so what group of what's the word? What I'm looking for?
Neurodivergent.
Neurodivergent people like this sort of sense of security.
Autistic and ADHD, and also there's
Okay.
a neurodivergent sensory processing disorder,
Uh-huh.
SPD. Sensory processing disorder is sort of that sensory side
Hmm.
without the communication and social difficulties. But it's sensory integration. When people say, I've got an autistic child and they're really, really struggling, what should I do for them? I always say, get a sensory OT. That's the first thing, because they will identify what their sensory needs are to help them stay regulated, and provide them with a sensory diet. So I used to work, with my class. We were constantly giving them deep pressure, massage, to keep them regulated through the day. And that is a key thing, really. Movement is so important. I used to work with a boy who ran into people and ran into the walls. And he got in trouble for it. And what I realized, he couldn't feel the edge of his body.
Mm.
So you can get jackets that you can inflate yourself to the right squeeze for what you need in that moment. You can inflate and deflate. Sorry, Sarah, you look like you wanted to say something.
Oh no, well, just one thing is it's not quite the same, but when my lad is feeling a bit you're like I'd use the word like overexcited. Sometimes we do this thing and I just get his duvet and I wrap him up. I like roll him in it like a sausage. We call it the sausage roll. And I think that's this. It's like someone said here, like how you swaddle a baby. Like I think it's just really nice and it just sort of chills him out of it. I do it before
Yeah,
bedtime sometime if he's a bit off the walls. But yeah.
yeah. Sometimes, I mean, I worked with an OT who used to come into my class, and we would put a mattress on top of the child and lie on it. Obviously, so they could breathe, but or a beanbag. anything that gives. Temple Grandin, who was sort of one of the very first autistic people to talk about being autistic, developed her own squeeze machine, and I think it was based on what she saw cattle being used for medical treatment. They go into sort of like this, I can't remember what it's called, like a crate
A
that they
crush.
could, yes, that's it. Yeah, so she built her own squeeze machine, and you can now buy it on I don't know, one of the sensory companies. You can buy your own squeeze machine. It's basically like a mangle. It's sort of a rubber squishy mangle you can go through.
Mhm.
So yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean,
Well,
do
thank
ask
you.
questions. There'll be time at the end. How am I doing for time, Sarah? I've lost track of it.
Well, we've got 20 minutes, so typically we would finish the presentation at about 1:45 and then have some questions. So if people want to type in their questions in the chat, we can see how many questions there are and we can
Okay.
tailor it
Yeah.
like that. So
Yeah, that's fine. So we also do treasure hunts, looking for flowers, insects. We call it treasure. I've got a little basket of treasures they collect. Leaves, plants, flowers, seedling, fungi, pine cones, stones, all sorts of things. And I can either get them a sheet that they can identify the pictures, or we can just go and see what treasure we can find and then identify it when we found it. That really gets them. The thing about treasure hunts, also with listening for birds, is it gets them in the moment. So that's the mindfulness. A lot of children, particularly ADHD children, really struggle to be in the moment, whereas if you're focusing on looking or listening or smelling, any of those senses, that really helps to bring them into the moment and take them away from the thoughts that are driving their anxiety. So yeah, we do a lot of art, photography. I've got a couple of young people who are well, one of them's quite a talented photographer. These aren't her photos, but yes, any natural art. I love Andy Goldsworthy. I don't know if you, but yeah, anything inspired by Andy Goldsworthy. Photos of the sunset. Photos. I love rotting stumps with moss and fungus and all sorts. It's one of my favorite things. This was something the school did, and I came to the wood and I thought, have I had witches or satanic rituals or something going on? But it was the school. And again, sort of weaving with plants, weaving with flowers, anything that gets them engaging with nature and smelling, feeling, just really connecting with nature. Oh, why has it done that? Oh no, sorry. I don't know why that happened. Oh no, I can't move the thing. Oh dear. There we go. You're watching me try. There we go. Oh no, I can't get to my. Can't move that down. Anyone got any idea how to move that?
right,
Oh,
move to where you were before and go on to slideshow at the top.
Oh, it's there. Yeah,
And
thank
then it'll
you.
say from current slide. There you go. From
Yeah,
current slide.
thank you.
Bingo.
There we go. Thank you.
No troubles.
There we go. Okay, so nurturing nature. Like I said with the horses, caring gives you caring back. So the children built a bird feeder. We built various bird, butterfly, bee houses. We've got some ducks, so we try and keep the stream clear. So we do a bit of wading in the mud to look after the ducks. We've got insect hotels. And we've been finding seedlings. We've got a couple of oak seedlings that we're trying to protect from the deer. without putting anything plastic up, and we've been relieving baby oaks of the honeysuckle that has decided to strangle them. So it's modeling. By me modeling nurturing things, they get some nurturing without being highlighted that they need nurturing. And then sort of various things, hammocks, tents. Again, tents is a small space that can be really calming. Hammocks are just great. Fires, we cook marshmallows, make s'mores. Metal detecting, we've got into that because digging is really good. And that's my dog Petal, who joins us, and those are the other two dogs. I've got 3 rescue dogs. Oh, don't know why it did that. And I've also got a caravan that's got various resources. So this is set up for a session with some ideas, because the young person wanted like a menu, but I thought rather than write ideas down, put them out so she can see them and then choose. So I've got puppets, I've got some paints for painting rocks, I've got some musical instruments, sitting in the wood and drumming. Today we were walking around with a duck call. The ducks didn't answer back, but yeah, music outside is fantastic. Yeah, I've got lots of books on bug hunting. I've got clay, so to sit outside and pens and pencils, drawing, creating art. It's just wonderful. And the caravan is also useful if it's pouring with rain. So it's sort of a storage and a cozy space to be. We spent a lot of time with the puppets today. I think he was matching all the puppets up with their friends. So he was working on something about friendships, and I don't question it. I'm curious about it and enable it and support it, because with art therapy, children can process things without words. They can paint and make a horrible mess. You don't have to talk about it. That's them somehow processing what's going on in their head without having to find the words. I worked with, just very quickly, am I all right to just say?
Yeah.
I worked with a young man who's adopted. It was all going wrong. He'd had a really difficult past, and he was up on the muck heap building shit towers. And the key worker was with him, supporting him, helping with the wheelbarrow. And I was watching and thinking, well, what would I say to his social worker if she came and said, why are you letting him dig in the muck heap? Well, digging and pushing a wheelbarrow is really regulating, but also the muck heap was an art form. He was processing, like a sand tray almost. He was processing something about his life being shit. We didn't need to talk about it. We just needed to be alongside him and enable it and support him with that, and without judgment, accepting, curiosity, and just be with him. So that's really the way I work. And that's the end.
Wow. Thank you, Sue. That's what a different day you've had to the rest of us, I believe. Wow. So how long have you had your woodland, Sue?
4 years.
Okay.
And I was taking children from Rainbow Horses to the woodland before I started this work, specifically in the woodland.
Okay. Wow.
Do you take your horses to the woodland as well?
No, I don't have the horses anymore.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I've had to close that business. Well, I've passed it on. I couldn't do it anymore. I was ill. So I've had to sort of step back a bit.
Hugh, do you work with children?
No. I have children, but
Okay.
not really. I'm sort of interested in developing something. I'm not sure what exactly. Fortunately do have a piece of, well, it's akin to an OPD, One Planet Development. I don't know if you've come across that. system. It's a regenerative low impact development, it's known as in the Cornish planning jargon. And they're just grappling with the first, we're the second people to ever put in, well, we're in the process of validation at the moment, trying to get a plan in with them. But yeah, so I'm just thinking about other areas besides the ones I've thought about already that might be very, because what I can hear from this, I'm very interested in ADHD, whatever it is, because I think I am for a start. And I'm also dyslexic, dyspraxic, but
Yeah, more,
and
yeah,
all that sort of stuff.
yeah, all the
So
initials.
I can sympathize. No, what's the word that I need? Uh,
Empathize.
empathize with these people, although that's always difficult too, empathy. And well, I'd really like to sort of develop that. And I think the only way you'll do it is engage yourself and find that you immerse yourself like Sue has, and become part of it, and it becomes part of your life.
Yeah, I think to
Yeah.
to that end, Misha has a question actually,
Oh,
Sue.
great.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it ties in nicely with what Hugh's saying. Misha says, would you have any advice for someone looking to move into this kind of work? So I guess we can two birds, one stone this with your knowledge there, Sue. This is from a late diagnosed autistic woman who absolutely loves to be outside. So how do you get into how do you yeah how would you recommend somebody step into this sort of work, Sue?
Um, I would suggest forest school training or forest bathing. So I looked at the Forest Bathing Institute. I think you need to get some sort of professional qualification to, particularly if you're wanting to work with children.
Yeah.
You need, you know, you need to be insured. You need to work within, if you're going to work therapeutically, you need to be a qualified therapist, really. Otherwise, you're putting, there's nothing, unfortunately, there's nothing that stops people saying, come and do outdoor therapy with me. It's not a protected profession term.
So,
Um,
but I've noticed in here that this is quite a lot of people have been drawn in, and this is their first SWOG webinar. So perhaps people don't know, but we have a YouTube channel and we have done webinars on forest bathing and the benefits of health and woodlands. So we'll put the link in the chat and people can go back and look at the other webinars that we've done, which might shed some light on that. But also, this is a community, and if people have any suggestions for any webinars that they would like to see in the future, then you can email me at sarah@swog.org.uk. And also, if you are somebody like Sue who would like to do a webinar, you can volunteer. I think I just accosted Sue
I
one
think
day.
you volunteered me for it.
I
Right.
saw Sue going up to our woodland with a trail of children, and they were doing something fabulous. And I thought, hey, up, I bet she'll do a webinar for us. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can do, woodland parties. I'm sure you could do that. Um, I'm just trying to think, you need to be very careful about trying to do therapy with children without a professional qualification, but you can do other work, you know, and it is therapeutic. Being in a wood is therapeutic.
The very least,
Yes.
the noise that so quite often, I mean, I live in like a row of houses and my lad's quite loud and I'm quite loud as well, to be honest. But up at the woodland, I don't need to try and make him quieter. I just say I can make him further away. I can't make him quieter, and then he can just yawp his head off to his heart's content, and that's quite nice for him. He can get it out. So yeah, except if
Could
it's
we
your
have
time.
Misha's question? I was wondering. Have we had it?
Yes, it was, would you have any advice for someone
Oh,
looking
right.
to
Okay,
move
of
into
course.
this
Yes.
kind
Yeah.
of work?
Yeah.
And Sue said, yeah, sort of looking at forest school
Yeah,
training.
because
And
you've
getting
got to
training.
think about insurance, professional indemnity, as well as, um, having your woodland insured for public liability and that sort of thing. You've got to think about DBS checks. You've got to think about
Yeah, exactly.
first aid qualifications. You've got to think about safeguarding if you're on your own with children. There are all of those sorts of
Ratios
things.
of
Yeah,
adult
yeah.
children.
Yeah.
There's all of it that
I'm a
I won't
first
one to
aider.
one, but yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to think about when you start doing anything other than taking your friends' kids up there.
And also a lot of kids who have these sort of needs, if you like, there can be flight risks as
Yes,
well.
yeah, yeah. Yes, you need to know that you can help them stay regulated, because if we're lighting fires and they suddenly decide to try and set light to you, have you got a risk assessment around that? Have you got experience and knowledge to manage that sort of behavior? If you're using pruners, can you make sure they don't cut their fingers off? That sort of thing.
Mm.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about.
So Jonathan says it does make you think how you could offer your woods to people with the qualifications. Well, Jonathan, that's the beauty of SWOG, because we can link all the people who own woodlands, well, plenty of them together, and the SWOG community, and Ali, as Ali will testify, the SWOG community on Facebook is very good for posing these kind of questions and getting answers to. Isn't that right, Ali? Also, who else had a question? Yeah, Daisy said that she's an occupational therapist and she helps with the small school Wood, and she's found this to be very inspiring. So yeah,
Oh, thank you, Daisy.
yeah,
I'm glad I put in a good word for OTs. They are I mean, speech and language therapists are great, but OTs really are my number one go-to for parents.
yeah. Jewel says, can they ask a question, please? So yes, Jewel, please do.
Right. First of all, I'm really sorry I missed the start of this, so I don't want you to go over things that I've missed. But just briefly, I have 6 acres of woodland near Chesterfield, quite easily accessible. And I live sort of a couple of hours drive from there. I'm now quite elderly, relatively 75, so um, I'm not as able as I'd like to be, but I really want the wood to be used. I am a qualified educational psychologist, social worker, etc. I've done all that stuff, so I've got my CRBs and stuff. But I'm really sorry. Where'd you get your kids from? How do you organize it all? My wood is a pause, protected ancient woodland,
Mm.
planted woodland. But I've got rid of all the trees the Woodland Trust said. I did a swap with another woodlander for a lot of the conifers, and I got it because I really want it to be useful to people, but I don't know where to start. I'm sorry, I don't know where you get hold of a load of kids, even if I renewed my CRB and everything.
It's a DBS now.
DBS, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry,
Um,
DBS.
but my first suggestion would be contact your local special schools,
Mm,
see if they've got somebody trained to do forest school, or that was I've got them there too. At first it was, I offered it to them for 3 years free, but they're now paying a little bit because I'm not able to work full time anymore. um I have got lots of contacts with local authorities, links with families, so it was very easy for me to get as many children as I want, because I'm in that community. All the parents know me, and people in the local authority know me, so that was fairly easy to get but it's making contact with
Yeah.
Special
Special
schools and even with like nurseries and whatnot, for forest schools, it's very a la mode, and I think every region will have a forest school
yeah.
sort of effort. So I think that would be your, but also, Jewel, if you join the Facebook group, that again, if you pose the question, and you'll find the link of it, in the chat that you just typed in. Ali has put a message to everyone to find SWOG on Facebook. If you click that and add it, there, if you pose the question about the area you live in, I'm sure people will come and say that they.
Right. I just to sorry, I don't target, but I live in Hebden Bridge, which everyone seems to have heard of these
Oh
days.
yeah, very very cool
And
place, very arty.
there is forest school stuff there that that's all established, but the wood is near Chesterfield,
Yeah.
which is a fair distance away. I don't have the contacts there. I don't know how to make that leap because
If
even though I've got the the commitment and the professional background, I don't have the strength and the nous to really organize it. I want to say to someone, look, there's this beautiful wood, really accessible, lots of opportunities. How can it be used? I don't know.
if you go on the local council to on Chesterfield's council, depending on where your wood is in relation to Chesterfield, go on to the council. Look at the schools in the area, look where the schools are in relation to your wood, and send out an email to all the schools with photos of the wood. I mean, when I offered it to the school, there was nothing there. They cleared a huge area for the fire pit and sitting. They created a meditation area by the oak. They made paths. They put in a composting toilet. So the school did all of that because they had this lovely wood to use.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure that they'll bite your hand off, Joel. Like, I think with schools being as underfunded as they are, if somebody offered them such an opportunity as that, I think you'd probably have your pick of the schools. Like, you'd be beating them off with one of the sticks from your wood.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because it has got so much potential, and it just, I just, I've been 5 years getting all the Woodland Trust stuff done, and it's now all in order, and meanwhile I've run out of steam to make it happen,
I
but.
also think another avenue, which I've spoken about, when you have like work to do in your wood, like planting or like a protection for like saplings. Duke of Edinburgh, schools that offer Duke of Edinburgh or Scout or Girl Guides or Rangers, Duke of Edinburgh efforts, that can be an avenue that I know some of our swaggers have explored for getting a bit of few menial tasks done, because they can earn Duke of Edinburgh bronze doing these sorts of things. So that's another way of, I'm not calling it child labour, I'm saying it's a symbiotic relationship, I'm going to call it.
Yeah, yeah, because this is just what I want it to be useful. I got it because I've always wanted wood. I love woods, but I just want it to be made good use of now. So yeah, I'll work on that. Thank you.
Talking
Right.
about, oh, sorry, go on.
I was
Go
just
on.
going to say, the messages in the chat, so are basically everybody saying thank you so much for your expertise and your time and sharing your knowledge in the webinar. I think everyone who's arrived has come to this. I think they've all given everyone a lot of food for thought, it seems. So yeah,
I'm
if
going
anybody has any questions, if you pass them to me, I can disseminate
Yeah,
them back to Sue.
I'm going to join the Facebook group so people can contact me through there if they want to. Can I just share a couple of extra slides, just because my mum died after I bought the wood, and I discovered that she'd written a story to be for children about growing up in America, and the first story was called The Wood. And I read it out at her funeral. We didn't even know she'd written this story. I knew she loved wood. She'd been to my wood. So it's probably going to be hard to read, but I just want to put it there. If anybody wants to look at it, enlarge it, read it. She bunked off school. She basically walked home from school. She lived in Detroit, through a little wood. It was an ancient woodland, and there was a plant there. She didn't know what it was, but she loved the plant. And she decided on her way to school to go and see if it was flowering. And it was. And it was a violet, and I've got wild violets in my wood. And so she spent the day in the wood, bunking off school, and went home at time, and then wrote a fake letter to the teacher from her mum. And I never knew anything about that. So I just wanted it up there. So if anybody's interested, really just, as a tribute to my mum who helped me get the wood. And I'm sure I've got my love of woods from her.
Thank you, Sue.
Right.
I think we can. I think we'll pop this story in the next month's newsletter, so everyone can enjoy.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we'll do that. Thank you.
I saw there's a raised hand. Is that?
Oh, hello. Just going back to what people were talking about earlier about ways of using a woodland. Something one could do, but I haven't organised it yet myself for my own plot, is local craftspeople sometimes want to do things like, or willing to do things like workshops on hedge laying and coppicing and green woodwork and stuff like that. So it is possible to use a woodland in that way. And also, if you want some coppicing, thinning, hedge laying and so on done, it's a way of getting some of the work done too.
Yep. Better than my child labour idea, Brown. And
Well,
also,
some of them might be young people, you never know.
yeah. But also, thanks for popping in and mentioning that, Brown, because on Monday, the 7th of July, Brown is doing a webinar for us.
Yes, I'll be treading the boards, and it'll follow on quite nicely from this because I'll be talking, amongst other things, about the relationship between nature connectedness and well-being, and forest bathing and all that kind of stuff, and perhaps share one or two anecdotes of my own experience starting a woodland on a particularly desolate piece of the Cambrian Mountains.
Yeah, so look out for that being advertised, and also look out for the recording of Sue's current webinar that we are still enjoying, that being advertised as well. So we're really building this is about our 19th, no, maybe our 22nd webinar we've done now. And we're really building a sense of community with people sort of joining in and doing webinars and asking questions. And it's a really sort of, yeah, it's really taken off in a way that I really hoped it would. So I'd like to say a ginormous thank you so much for the time. I know you've poured a lot of passion and time into this talk for us. And I know from the number of times we've met. And just thank you everybody, for newcomers and people who are repeat returners for just being SWOGgers. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please email sarah@swog.org.uk. That's any questions to do with this webinar or webinars of the future or anything that you would like clarifying. That's who we are. That's what we do. So thank you to everybody, but especially thank you today to Sue. And
Thank you.
see you on the 7th of July for Brown's webinar. Thank you so much.
I'm looking forward to that, Brown.
Okay, great. Great to look forward to seeing you there then.
All right. Ta-ta, everybody. Enjoy your tea.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Why?
Bye.